on the card today, huh?
We do not.
Okay.
If we see 55 degrees, we'll be doing good. But
I'm concerned about him. I'm thinking like sending him a support call or something. Like,
Well, he was just out here, so he got, a little bit acclimated to the California weather before he went home.
or spoiled.
I did, and believe me, I was admonished thoroughly upon my return because I didn't bring the sunshine back.
But that's the Irish thing, isn't it? I mean, the
Sure,
the admonishing.
All I could say is I brought my sunny face. Is that good enough?
There you go.
Your sunny face is always welcome, my friend.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. So you want to talk California today, huh?
Yeah, why don't we start off with a
Rubbing it
little
in.
of the national, and then we'll slide into California.
So Lodging Econometrics tracks hospitality real estate across the country, and one of our primary capstone reports as we talk about new hotel construction.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the pleasure of being the keynote speaker for the California Lodging Investment Conference, and one of the things that I said there was that we had 86 new brands announced they were going to start a project in the United States since the beginning of 2015. Okay, and that's a real big capstone of where we are today in the cycle, because we've had 10 years of operating performance growth now, and that operating performance off the bottom of the banking crisis after 2008 has really been a catalyst and a driver. And the number one reason that the operating performance has continued to grow is that we have had unprecedented demand growth, and really the mobile society that we've turned into now, as the iPhone is going to turn 11 years old this year, has been a big part of that. And the hotel industry is raging along, if you will, in terms of operating performance. So we now have 688,000 rooms in the new construction pipeline across the United States.
Hey, Bruce, give us that number again.
Yeah,
would
say
you
that
please?
again, please.
688,000 rooms in the new construction pipeline in the United States, which is up about 7% year over year.
Well, that's amazing, but let's spin this a little bit. As my co-host is a designer, are you seeing an influx of more hospitality work at your firm?
Yeah, but it's interesting how it's manifesting itself, and we use the word hospitality usually interchangeably with hotel and resort.
Yeah,
but
and restaurant,
but more so as a property that is a hotel lodging kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Even the word lodging actually here applies the same way. The word hospitality is starting to get fused in with things like multi-unit house, family projects.
Yeah.
It's getting infused with things that are not your traditional matrices of what we would call hospitality, but the service of hospitality is being infused in there. And in many ways, because it is being used as a differentiator.
Right.
If you're doing multifamily and you haven't basically infused hospitality amenities and components into it and really dialed in, not just
maximize your ROI.
Yeah, so now this is a way to differentiate your product in your market, to basically shield you from any turn in the economy, and to provide a quality of life service that is not necessarily on a room rate, but an extended stay, apartments. The common idea of the fact that everybody should be owning a single family home, those days are gone, shot, because right now basically there's no tax benefits to doing that. So you're better off almost investing in multi-units instead of single families.
That's a whole other show.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, my point is a lot of these people that are developing that kind of product are bringing in the hospitality element to basically increase their value.
Yeah, that's been going on for a while now.
Yeah.
Well, I think, if you're doing a multifamily unit, I think being able to deliver something that's ready to move into, I think is a big impact. Ready to rent, I think is a big impact. Lessening custom design fees, I think we've seen that all over the place.
Yeah.
Right.
And so why do I have to recreate the wheel if somebody knows how to spin it already?
Exactly.
And, you can, as a multifamily developer, you can come up with 2 or 3, platforms of thought for what you want to do with those units. And it's really delivering a service. And, of course, you can leverage the multi-product purchase kind of format as well, too, and you can get better deals from the suppliers.
Exactly.
For years in the hotel business, right?
Hey, Bruce, who's leading the pack out of all the brands right now in the new development?
So the top 2 is hot off the press here, Craig. Home 2 Suites is now number one.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Home 2 Suites has 416 new construction projects in the pipeline nationally. Holiday Inn Express has 415.
Yep.
Wow. That's amazing.
Now, Express overtakes them if you consider conversions coming in, because they have about 3 dozen conversions coming in. But from a strictly new construction basis, that's significant.
Yeah.
Significant for two reasons. First of all, Home 2 is extended stay.
Right.
Right.
I don't think we've ever had an extended stay brand lead the new construction pipeline totals.
Not that I can recall.
So that's significant. The second thing is that chain scale, the upper mid-scale for extended stay, seems to be the sweet spot. And you'll see a new brand from IHG probably along that genre. And Town Place Suites is very successful for Marriott right now, and significantly, that's also upper mid-scale.
Scale.
And for the first time here at the beginning of this year, we now passed 1 million existing guest rooms in the upper mid-scale chain scale for branded properties. So
Over a million.
it's all kind of adding up into a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that upper mid-scale chain scale represents easily 218,000 of the 688,000 rooms in the new construction pipeline.
Wow.
So it has the most rooms in the pipeline, it has the hottest brands in the pipeline, and it's really a chain scale that developers have warmed up to, and certainly are building a tremendous amount of them. And it's starting to really show now, as that brand is even going into urban centers, which is another follow-up thing that I talked about at the Click conference.
Right.
Urban center upper mid-scale development would have never been concepted 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But today, a Hampton Inn and a Holiday Inn Express in an urban center is completely viable, and in fact are the best performers in the brand.
There you go.
We've become almost immune to paying over $250 a night in an urban center to stay in a Holiday Inn Express.
Mm-hmm.
That was never contemplated when that brand launched, but in fact, it's very viable today.
You know, it's funny that you bring that up. I was in San Francisco, it must have been over a year ago, and I walked into a newer Holiday Inn Express and just started talking to the guy behind the front desk, get some information on the hotel. And I asked him what his ADR was, and he's going, "Oh, it's $350 a night." And I almost fell over. This was over a year ago now. It's like, are you kidding me? And I like Holiday Inn Express.
Market
I love
specific.
IHG. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bagging on that at all. If you can get it, great. And IHG is a big sponsor for the California Lodging Investment Conference, so I do appreciate that. And it's just amazing what you can get at this product type in the urban market. So
you're also seeing in the upper mid-scale and even in the upscale chain scales, you're starting to see boutique announcements down there. You could use the Tapestry by Hilton as an example. And I know we were talking a little bit about Anaheim in kind of some of the activity that you're seeing there, but in Anaheim you have a really interesting conversion, as you have an existing Country Inn and Suites that's converting to a Tapestry.
That's going to be phenomenal. I want to see that when it's done. That's one.
It'll be a couple of years.
Yeah.
It sounds like the hotel's actually going to close to have that happen, as we have a 2-year timeline for that.
Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we did that with an independent and converted it to a Candlewood. It was only running 35% occupancy as an independent, and it was a 15, 16-year-old Candlewood prototype back in the day, and it went independent. And we shut it down. It was running 35% occupancy, touched everything in it, added a third floor pool to the balcony in the back, and I mean just a ton of structural steel. And it was turnkey in 8 months because we had shut it down. And we passed the city, building and health and the brand inspections all on the first go around. So I don't know if that's possible today or not.
I'd imagine a pretty large percentage of the labor for hospitality, and again, Rad, you were talking about the definition of hospitality. Theme parks, some of the things that they do there. You have a few things happening in Anaheim. I think half the hospitality labor in the state of California has got to be centered around that 5-mile radius right there, trying to get everything finished up in advance of the opening of probably the biggest thing that's happened at Disneyland in 25 years.
Yeah.
So the world is coming by, and get them all spruced up, because
we've always talked about markets like Anaheim as being almost like their own little microcosm, like they function by their own market realities, right? But I mean, you're talking about a ton of inventory of rooms. I mean, that number was shocking that you shared. Yeah. Right, and it's coming on, and I've been following a bunch of stuff, and I'm interested from your perspective, from Logic Econometrics, Bruce, is that the indicators from economists that I've talked to that are not susceptible to emotionality is that, and there are a handful of them out there. Okay, yeah, we're all laughing because we know that. Yes, yeah. I think Bruce was chuckling actually too, right? But some of them that are not subject to emotionality, they're saying that the indicators are healthy, that the economy is fine, that there's high employment, that there's mobility, there's jobs. So, is this underlying current of worry about a turn in the economy just matter of fact because we're approaching an election year and because we've been at this high for so long? What are your senses?
Well, if you get enough economists in the room, they'll talk themselves into a recession, or they'll talk themselves into the condition that leads towards a recession.
Right.
There is no question that the global economy outside of America is tenuous. Okay, certainly Brexit is still not
the disaster. Yeah,
you have the Chancellor of Germany essentially retiring from politics, so the EU is somewhat in turmoil. You've had 4 or 5 significant terrorist attacks. You have the Chinese economy that's in pretty deep trouble. So there's a lot of negative things to look at, okay? But here in America, we don't quite have those conditions. And there are a number of reasons for that. You could certainly look at it from a political standpoint and say, well, the stock market has never done better. And that's a fact, and it's probably propped up better than we expected it to be. We did have a minor correction at the beginning of the year, but it's clawed some of the way back. The Fed has not been as aggressive on interest rate hikes as some would have anticipated. In fact, they're now talking about it going in the other direction.
Yeah.
And so that's been a positive for the industry because money still remains inexpensive. When you have a high stock market, money remains inexpensive.
Yeah.
Those public companies are still also doing very well. And it's actually reaching kind of the time in the marketplace where, from a hotel perspective, it's more likely that portfolios will transfer than individual hotels.
Hotels, yeah.
Mostly because you have an individual hotel, it's never operated better. Well, that also translates to it's never been worth more. And so that doesn't make that too appealing unless there's some investment to create upside, whether that be through renovation or brand change. But whereas portfolios, in many cases, this is the time when you can sell 10 great ones and 2 pretty good ones.
There you go.
And, you kind of, the broken up pieces may be actually worth more than the whole.
The whole, yeah.
So,
yeah. Now, we've been seeing that for a while now, and I agree with you on that. And I think it's going to continue to happen. You're going to get, a decent portfolio out there, and you're going to have a couple of dogs, and then you're going to decide what you're going to do with those dogs. So, hey, what's going on in Newport, Dana Point, and Los Angeles there, my friend?
Well, there's a couple things to report. Certainly in Los Angeles, it is probably really number 2 in the United States right now in terms of properties in the pipeline. It's sitting at, for new construction, at about 158 projects, only behind New York. Los Angeles has seen a renaissance, certainly in downtown. We have 10 new hotels under construction. 18 more planned to begin in the next 12 months, which would be kind of between this spring and next spring. So really, L.A. is a market where there have been some openings, but there's a heck of a lot more coming.
And you've got, what, Marriott's got 115 hotels
Yeah.
in planned development for L.A., and then when we were at Alice, we noticed that the cranes were not moving at the Hyatt with those condos. What's the latest on that?
Now, they will say up and down, it's just a pause. Don't look over here. Okay.
Ignore the man behind the curtain.
But it seems clear that the residential component of that development is what's in peril at this point. I think that the hotel will still continue, but I do believe that the open date is now really pushed to summer 21.
Interesting.
Well, and then the residential component may be up for not necessarily a pause, but a reprogramming.
Yes, that's also fair. If you're looking at that location, you have some very unique aspects to it, and certainly you think about this home sharing and things like that. That kind of location is prime for that kind.
Absolutely, and you've got an
in L.A. No,
you've got an aging population that basically lives differently today at that age than what you would consider, like older couple aging together, or extended family. You've got a lot of single older people that are looking for a communal.
Don't pick on my demographic.
No. I'm not picking on your demographic, but a communal, easy, quality of life driven product. And so when I look at a hospitality and you factor it through a different filter, slightly different from what we've done in the past, those are not necessarily challenges. They may be reprogramming opportunities.
And I think we should really key in on what Marriott announced yesterday. Okay, that is definitely something to pay attention to as it relates to that alternative lodging.
Why don't you speak to that a little bit, Bruce?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so Marriott announced yesterday, as an extension of something they've been doing for a little while, they've had this relationship with a company in the UK where they've had 300 homes available in London for about the past 15 months to rent as a Marriott Bonvoy member.
Okay.
And you can use points. You can get points. They announced at the beginning of the year that they were going to expand that to a few more cities in Europe because it was very successful. But then they basically said, Homes and Villas by Marriott International, here's 2,000 properties of inventory. And we're gonna go on with this, and we're going to have a third-party management company based out of Florida that's going to run this. And you'll be able to get points and use points within this inventory. And it's really a step in the direction of, the 5 million room nights available on average on Airbnb, with Marriott only having about 1.2 million rooms with all of their inventory. So it's stepping towards that. And there's going to be a stay minimum of 3 nights with this. But as a guy who has experienced Airbnb and experienced that kind of alternative lodging option, the number one and number two thing with me is safety and cleanliness.
Right.
Okay? And if you think about it, you put Marriott's stamp on it, you would assess that it will be safe and it will be clean.
Yeah.
So it brings a different perspective to it that I think is really, really smart and sharp. And they're not the first to enter this kind of market, and they won't be the last. But when Marriott puts their foot down in the room, everybody hears it. So
yes, they do.
That was clearly what yesterday was about.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Bruce, we got about 5 minutes left, and then we're going to go to commercial. We're going to cut you loose. So what's going on in Newport Beach and Dana Point? We've talked about L.A., and we'll try and get up to San Francisco and back again. So.
Yeah. Okay. In Newport Beach, we have a few conversions. We're going to. You have the only Home 2 Suites conversion happening in the United States. It's an existing Comfort Inn that's going to convert to a Home 2.
There you go.
And that's unique on its own. Tremendous amount of renovation in that market. I think we're tracking about 20 of them. But the race is on, to open so many new hotels. And just about 8 of 10 are, in fact, these upper, mid-scale, and upscale hotels. Extremely high percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's directly driven by, a 105 room operation, 90 to 105 rooms on every single one of these.
Mm-hmm.
And to add 16, it's what's going to be 12 new hotels into Newport Beach Market will have a very big impact, Craig. So I'd prepare for maybe an operating performance downturn in 2021 when all of these open.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
But those developers drive right at those high RevPAR markets, and you definitely have one there.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, is this an adjustment period once that inventory hits the market? Is the market still gonna bear it? Is there enough? Or is this like a rush to get it done before we face a genuine change in the economy?
Well, you have a couple impacts. The first impact is that when you have an increase of supply of 10% over 2 years, you will have occupancy downturn.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to happen. Okay. The second thing is that the type of supply that comes in has an impact on how far rate will drop too. So in many markets, this upper mid-scale wave of development has really changed the existing supply matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have, just say, 30,000 rooms in a market and you add 2,000 upper mid-scale rooms to the market, it changes the whole dynamic and pricing power within the market.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have more lower-end rooms. And I said this on stage a number of times. The impact and the change of how supply looks today versus the way it looked 10 years ago affects how ADR is going to perform. And it might have forever have affected it. Okay? And so that's kind of the dynamics that you're looking for. And that's not oversupply. It's just a surge at a certain time that caused some downturn for a few months after that can be recovered.
Yeah.
Okay, no question about it.
You got it.
So that's happened in a few places, I think, where we have seen the openings already. Okay, most of the things that were happening in San Francisco have been completed. Okay, there are a few properties remaining that are underway, but for the most part, the openings in San Francisco have happened already. And there's a few renovations that are just wrapping up, if you will, because the Moscone Center, as I saw at the AHOA conference last week, the Moscone Center and the San Francisco RevPAR change had such an impact on the national number last month. It was outstanding.
There you go. Very good.
And that's a direct result of from down 33 RevPAR year over year to up 24.
There you go.
So it was a crazy impact. So
crazy impact. Hey,
California
Bruce,
has about 90,000 rooms in the new construction pipeline today.
Yeah.
And as I've said, and I said on the stage there, and I repeat it again for our listeners today, the next 2 years, California is going to open more hotels than any other country other than the United States as a whole and China as a whole.
Unbelievable. I thought the crowd, when you brought that up at Click, I thought they were all going to fall out of their chairs.
Yeah, there was definitely some shock.
Yeah, that pregnant pause by the entire audience. So we had 324 people in the room. Their mouths all hit the ground at the same time. So
well, I like to have that jaw dropper, Craig. It's part of the performance. So.
Well, and that's why you'll be back next year as our keynote again, my friend, and I appreciate that. Hey, one last thing before we let you go. What was your impression of AHOA-Con?
It's the one dynamic thing that I walked away with is that unlike any other conference in the world, you have all walks of life and hospitality that attend that event.
Yes, you do.
From the general manager to the junior operations person to the guy who just bought his first hotel to the veteran that's been in the business for 55 years and everywhere in between. So the dynamism of what happens there is really unmatched, and many of my supplier friends would say, you want to learn the hotel industry, go sit at an AHOA conference for a week, and that certainly happened last week in San Diego. Just not a terrible place to be.
No. I got to tell you, this is probably the best AHOA-Con that I've been to, and I've been going to them for about 27 years, not every one, obviously. But this was organized. The San Diego Convention Center was an outstanding venue. I liked it far better than I have in Vegas or any place else that I've gone to, including Long Beach, and I officed in Long Beach for a number of years. So, my friend, thank you for joining us. Let's let you give our audience a shameless plug, and how can everybody get a hold of you and take advantage of your services?
Yep.
Well, you can always catch all of our news and notes on lodging econometrics through our LinkedIn. Of course, you can visit us on Twitter as well as on Facebook, Lodging Econometric. And if you're looking for me personally, BFINNH on Twitter. And I'll pass along all the news and nuggets that you need to know. And it's an exciting time as we enter spring construction season. And so lots of activity out there. And thanks so much to you guys for having me on today.
Thank you, Bruce.
Bruce, thanks for joining us. And if you are not subscribing to Lodging Econometrics' data, you should. I know when I was at my previous employer, we had it in there, and it's just phenomenal, the data that they have. And if you search out the Messiah's show on No Vacancy,
Glenn Hausman,
you will find a great interview with Bruce and I on No Vacancy from Ahoacan. We were live at the time, so it was a good time. And you can also find Bruce on my other show. Check out California 3x10. So, Bruce, thank you for joining us.
Have a great day, gentlemen.
We're going to go to a commercial, and we're going to be back with an old friend that I haven't seen in a long time, Martin Taylor.
Hi, this is Ryan Huntsman with Chicago Title Company, located in beautiful Newport Beach, California. We're a national hub for our company, so we service the entire nation very efficiently with one of the largest national footprints in the industry. As part of the Fidelity family of companies, we get to enjoy and boast about being ranked number 302 on the Fortune 500 list. We're very proud of our tenured staff as they handle some of the most complex and high liability transactions across the country in a very professional and pragmatic fashion. Finally, many people are unaware of all the ancillary services that our Fidelity family of companies has to offer, including 1031 exchanges, UCC services, home warranty services, and much more. So if you haven't created a strategic partnership with a solid title company representative, I urge you to reach out to myself or someone else at Chicago Title to get the most of what we have to offer. Thank you.
And we're back. This is Check Out California. I'm Craig Sullivan.
And I'm Rod Gantus.
And we have Martin Taylor from Troutman Sanders LLP in the room with us in his first appearance on Check Out California. Marty, good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Hey, do me a favor and tell our audience a little bit about your background, please.
Sure. So I've been practicing lawyer for about 30 years. And
he's only 27, so yeah, you guys do the math on that one.
56. So, but focused on finance throughout that period of time, both distressed debt as well as origination, structuring, financings, things like that. Done my fair share of hotel and hospitality.
Yes, you have.
On both ends of the spectrum. So I've done a fair amount of the origination work, and I've done more than my fair share of the workout work, particularly in the last downturn that we had. That was a lot of the ones that I'd originated, I worked out as well. Okay. So it was kind of an interesting perspective. I mean, you've mentioned some keywords here about residential suites and things like that. A lot of things that we saw back in 2005, 2006. I haven't heard the word mentioned yet about the partial ownership or the where you're basically having multiple owners of one unit. That was one of the big downturns or the factors, because that financing just evaporated when the market, and that really changed the values of those properties quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting that you also did the workouts on some transactions that you had handled the initial acquisitions on. So, I mean, obviously you had an in-depth knowledge of the deal, of the asset, and probably, what buttons not to push with the lender as well, where if they'd gone to somebody else, they wouldn't have all that knowledge and expertise. And I'm imagining that parts of the workout scenario were pretty calm and not really over exaggerated to a degree.
We had our fair share of hostile meetings. To be clear, I mostly represent lenders,
Yeah.
and in the workout world, I represent lenders.
Lenders only.
And so we're agented deals where you'll have a multiple. You have a lender group in there. I'll be representing the administrative agent, or in some instances, I'm representing one of the lenders who's participating in that deal. So you're kind of seeing it from all different angles. One of the things that's an advantage of when you did the origination and you've worked on that loan from the start is you kind of know where all the bodies are buried. You know what the issues can be, and you also know the players.
Right.
Which in the workout world, a lot of times the success or failure of the workout is not so much the property itself, but the players involved.
Players themselves.
So,
yeah. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your firm?
Sure. So
You're
Troutman,
a partner over there.
I am.
Yes.
I am so far. Still, I've been with Troutman for about 9, going on 10 years now. Troutman's a national firm in the AmLaw 100 and full service, firm. We have about 650 lawyers. We are up and down the Eastern Seaboard, based out of Atlanta.
Okay.
And then we have offices in New York, Charlotte. Richmond, D.C., Chicago, and then San Francisco, Orange County, and San Diego,
There you go.
and also in Portland, Oregon.
Okay. So yeah, you've got a good chunk of the country covered. So with now you're still doing a lot of the work with lenders. What are you seeing with the lending requirements? Are the deals getting tougher right now?
I'm always a good bellwether because my practice will switch. I'll be 80 to 90% one way or the other depending on the economy. And so if the economy is doing really well, probably about 80-90% of my work is going to be on upfront origination, transactional work,
Right.
Financings, anywhere from a few $100 million to 10-20 million type deals.
Okay.
And then when the economy shifts, you go through this period of time where you're slow, and then it switches over time, and you're doing 80-90% workouts, and that's what happened in the last recession. So right now, what I'm seeing out there is the market's still strong, still robust, has a good pipeline, but people have been saying, and they've been saying for a couple of years now, we're in the late innings, or we're in the ninth inning, and I think all of those kind of comments have died away because people really don't know.
Right.
But what you are seeing is you're seeing people are a little bit nervous about oversupply, overdemand, overheated markets, particularly in the hotel industry. Most of my lender clients, are from the traditional world of banking, to the larger financial institutions. And we're not seeing those institutions out there hungry for the financing deals, particularly if it's unbranded or things like that when it comes to hotels.
I agree with you on that, and I know there's certain lenders that I know that are very, very good at construction loans, and they're obviously really looking at the sponsor. They're also looking at the feasibility studies, but they're taking a step back and going, look, we're only going to give you 50% loan to cost, and now you're going to have to make up that gap.
Right.
Now, are you seeing that 50% being a pretty solid number across the board, or are you seeing that more just in the community banks and the commercial banks that are playing, and you're seeing other...
Are you talking about the hotel space now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you can go to everything. You can go to the hotel space, and I mean, let's exclude retail. Okay,
Right.
That's just too much brain damage for everybody.
I'm seeing higher, LTV ratios than that. But what you're really seeing are the credit support. And diving in on the credit support, do we want a full repayment guarantee? Those type of things, and maybe they'll burn off on stabilization, or they'll burn, if it's a new construction, or if it's a rehab, or if it's a conversion. They're going to want to have that credit support. They're going to want an operator who's very experienced. Right now, industrial is kind of the darling of the market.
Yeah.
And so, you can be a mom and pop with no real experience, and you can go to a bank, and the chances of you getting a loan for that, if it's in the right market and you have enough equity, you're probably going to get a loan for that.
What do you credit that with, Marty? Like, why is industrial?
because industrial is always, if you look at the trend of industrial, it's low cost. It usually has long-term tenants in there, or those tenants can be replaced because people need that space. It's not a high cost. It's higher now, but historically, it's not a high cost per square foot, right? So from a lender's perspective, that's something that it'll go up and down with the economy, but it's not going to crash and burn like you've seen historically with things that are more consumer oriented, especially higher end hotels, resort hotels, things like that. I mean, I think there's a concern like in places like Anaheim where you have this huge inventory that is there and is being created. You're seeing costs being driven up, right? The labor costs, all of those things, and then you're seeing the rates, the RevPAR and all of that, is going up. Well, what happens when we have a retraction in the economy, whether small or medium or whatever it is?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the first areas that people are going to pull back from there. You're not going to have that type of travel. The company's not going to send somebody to the nicer hotel. They're going to say go to another hotel, or they're going to do alternative. Hey, let's have a video chat.
Yeah, it's a conference call. It's using Zoom, whatever it is, and you're not putting you on a plane.
Right.
Yeah.
But you got to store your widget somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's why industrial is always a little bit more
a good
attractive.
bet, yeah. Well, it's funny. There was
It's a good way to explain it. The consistency of function and use versus less susceptible to market changes, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. I was watching Barry Sternlicht from Starwood Capital yesterday on television, and he was going, we're having kind of a natural slowdown right now. Not really a pause, but it's slowing down a little bit. And, China, Europe, what's going on with Germany, new chancellor coming in. France was a big concern of his. And he said, we've got an election year coming up as well, so we typically, throttle back a little bit for that as well. But, it's going to be interesting to see where we're at, in the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah.
And see what does the market bear? We have outpaced supply.
Yeah.
For hotels here in certainly in Northern and Southern California. I think Central Coast it may be a coin toss. But it's again down in San Diego last week for a HoaCon. Every hotel from the airport through the gas lamp was full. And one of my friends and clients opened up the first ground up Moxie in California. It's in the gas lamp. Went over and toured it, and it was like phenomenal. And I'm going, okay, this is hip, chic, cool, and it's a brand. Okay, so I'm getting my rewards points.
Right.
So it was really something. Ducking in and out of all the hotels, going from. I was staying at the St. James at the eastern end of the gas lamp and walking all the way down to the convention center. So I got a good bird's eye view or street perspective of all the hotels around there, and it was really interesting.
Well, and there's an effort in the gas lamp to take it to the next level now.
Unlike any other place in Southern California,
Yeah.
possibly with the exception of Anaheim.
Right.
So, but it's good for business. It's good for the recreational traveler. I mean, we took over Petco Park. They had 9,000 of us on the outfield of the stadium,
Yeah.
So I'm sure the groundskeeper was going, "Oh no."
Well, and it's funny, people don't remember, but that was part of when those two towers went up in San Diego.
Yeah.
That was part of the overall master plan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just taken that long for us to actually start dialing
Catch
it in
up,
and
yeah.
catching it up. Yeah, it's interesting. It really is going to be interesting to see whether just the natural sort of slowdown versus a jarring jolt, small or large, if that actually results in a different outcome, like versus reactive. Like if it actually ends up being, I've got a breathing space, it's slowing down, I don't have my back against the wall, how do I respond to it is different from when I do.
Yeah.
And what comes out of that in terms of reprogramming, evaluating things slightly differently, maybe changing it from a different perspective of how you're pitching products and services and properties. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it will have to do with, what type of debt do they have in that property? Is it long-term debt? Is it fixed? Is it variable? Do they have a mezz piece in there? In other words, is it a stabilized product, good LTV, good sponsor? Those type of companies will be able to weather the storm. But what you're seeing out there is, because I think the more traditional banks have retracted from the market, people are seeking to build to complete these projects. They're going to alternative financing, which is going to have higher spreads. They may even have higher LTVs, but they're going to have higher spreads and things like that. So it'll be interesting what will happen when you have a downturn where people don't have that rev bar, can't make that higher debt service, because unless the costs likewise come down, which is unlikely, I think what you're going to see is those players that are higher levered, have interim debt or short-term debt, they're going to struggle.
Let me ask you a political
Very good point.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a couple of people that are being considered for the Fed now, and there's also some rumors that the Fed may lower rates. What do you think happens on the lending side if these two nominees make it to the Fed, and if in fact we do get a retraction on interest rates from the Fed? Is that a short-term gain for everybody out there, or is this digging a deeper ditch
that you pay for later?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're talking about the cost of funds, and in a lot of the loans, I mean, if it's a fixed loan, right, that's great for the lender, right? If it's a variable loan, that's great for the borrower.
Right.
But a lot of these people are doing rate swaps as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are hedging against that, whichever way it goes. So I think the lower rates is going to be more of a boon for the economy, which means short run, that's going to be great for everyone. Long run, is that going to create even more oversupply? And so that the issue when you get to that point where you now have a recession, is your supply going to be so great that you're going to have a much greater recession?
And how long do you take to absorb that?
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the subprime market, right? I mean, you had low interest rates, you were giving away homes, people could finance anything, so you created this huge oversupply in the market.
Got a pulse?
Yeah. And then that got pulled out.
Right.
And so, and what did that create? I mean, that created, the quote unquote Great Recession. We were very busy working out a lot of those residential communities and foreclosing and going after, and it was a lot of it was it was bad. I remember one was, just for an example, real quick, the 200 lot development. Yeah. The average price per lot, not for the home, and this is out in Riverside, San Bernardino area.
Riverside, San Bernardino.
Right. $271,000 just for the lot.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and when we ran the numbers after we got the property back and we were working through it, it had a negative value.
Wow.
Because the cost to build on those lots, just the cost to build a house, not the lot itself, was greater than the value of the house that you could sell for. So, and look, that's a short-term issue. That's 3-4 years. But from a lender's perspective, you don't want to keep, they're not in the business of keeping property on their books. So you're trying to move that product.
No, and that 3 to 4 years turns out to be 6 or longer.
Right.
Because of the oversupply problem, because quote unquote the Inland Empire is affordable housing, and now it's not.
Right.
And you've got a lot of vulture funds and other.
No, when when you're paying when you're paying $21 on a toll road to get in and out of there. I mean, that's another layer of cost, right? I mean, do I pick up a more expensive piece of property closer to where I work versus drive further out and basically pay the difference every month in terms of, it's a very interesting combination of powers and interests basically pulling on that.
Right. And what's interesting, I mean, you touched one thing like the commute, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to one of my clients who's a hotel operator, a significant hotel operator around here, and he said one of the biggest costs is labor. And it's not just the cost, it's the availability of finding people. And they're looking at things where they're going to, charter buses and have spots where people will come and then they'll can bus them in because they can't get enough housekeepers and servers
that are then within proximity of absolutely
because the cost of living
it's too high.
And you know what, part of that is almost commonplace now in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley,
except one slight difference. They got a dependable public transportation system.
Right. But you've also got the companies now doing buses.
Yeah, well, I mean,
right?
it's a natural evolution.
Yeah.
You're gonna build that much capacity,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have to staff it. Where are you bringing the staffing in from? I mean, I'm surprised we're not flying them in yet.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I mean, I remember when I grew up in the Middle East, when we were having those boom, economies of a lot of construction. People were basically literally brought in from China, from
India,
Asia, India, whatever, and they were basically living outside, being bussed every day. And Dubai got built that way, right? Literally living in shared accommodations, basically, and then sending all the money back and sharing food. I mean, we're getting to the point where the standard of living near these attractions, these destinations, is so high that unless you're going to automate everything, how exactly are you going to basically, and it might require policy. It might require a change of zoning and policy and stuff of that nature, because I don't think you can bus all of that. Like, at some point, critical staffing is going to have to be
Right.
addressed.
Well, the impact on the infrastructure as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you allow for that housing to be built in those areas, is the infrastructure ready for that? I mean, now you have to start working on infrastructure and all that. It's a complex problem.
Power grid, infrastructure, water supply. It is still a desert called California, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that was part of the thing that, why Irvine Company was so smart. They stopped doing condos and PUDs and detached housing 2 to 3 years before the meltdown. They'd gone into that apartment community and that multifamily with the hospitality-like services. Yeah, we're going to do a Wednesday night movie out on the lawn by the pool, and invite everybody with the dry cleaners and the concierge services.
Right. If you track, and we talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
If you track the situation with the incentive to basically own a single family home on a piece of property for a younger generation, I don't want the hassle.
Yeah.
The stigma of renting has gone out the window.
Right. Well, I have 5 kids ranging from 24 to 5, and not one of them I could see ever wanting to do some self repairs.
Too complicated.
Right? I grew up doing that. I mean, you did everything yourself. We never had anybody in the house. You did everything yourself. And the generation is fundamentally different from that.
Yeah.
And then you take on top of that, what's the advantage? Particularly in Southern California, you don't get your mortgage deduction. I mean, it's nominal, right?
Yeah, the tax
all
changes.
those issues, are a significant factor. The
Reality
only saving
check,
grace you have is that you are controlling an asset, which hopefully is appreciating over time, and you're doing it at low dollars, right?
Well, so Marty, so then that in itself, especially with, call it the new workforce in terms of generational shift, right? That's going to make a difference in terms of what is going to be attractive from an investment perspective for them when it comes to real estate investment.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Industrial, like you're saying, things that basically I can still get some kind of tax benefit out of that are not my single family home, and I don't have to basically spend every weekend or 3 out of every month basically to make sure I do home repairs.
Yeah. But there is that natural. And I think a lot of people still have that, right, where they want to have a home. Like my brother's a little bit older, and he has 3 daughters, and they're married. And once they get married, they all want to have a home. They buy a home. So I think what you're looking at is kind of that interim, years before they're
get married later, start families later. Travel, don't want to be hassled by stuff. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And then if you take that to the next level, is what is their impact and ramifications on things like home? Do-it-yourself, home stores, like other retail components, big boxes. Now they're not getting that flow every weekend, basically coming in and buying stuff for the garden, right?
Right.
It's interesting.
Well, and you're already seeing an impact on Lowe's.
Yeah.
They're having some issues.
Yeah.
So and retail in general is, but you look at that, you're going, wow, really? I guess people are not fixing things like
you could almost run a parallel, right? Because about increase of inventory beyond belief on the retail side a few years ago, and where we're now basically saddled with all that extra inventory. That's and then Amazon changed the whole way that you shop, and there you go, perfect storm.
And I think you're already seeing some oversupply in some of the major metropolitan areas in the hotel sector as well.
Which areas do you think we got an oversupply in?
Oh, from what I've read and talking with my client, L.A.
Yeah.
There's an oversupply. What's coming online in San Francisco, that's going to be an oversupply. I think Anaheim is going to be an oversupply in time. I mean, and I could be wrong, right? I'm not an economist, nor am I, in there on that side of it. But just kind of looking at everything. But I will tell you, I've said for the last year or two, I I can't imagine that with all of the multifamily going up that we're not going to have an oversupply of that, sooner rather than later. But it hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened, which surprises me.
Yeah.
But and I would have thought it would have been sooner than later. San Francisco, I think, just because the cost of construction up there, you're like at $1.2 million per key now.
Yeah.
Okay. And no, that's frightening. I think repositioning.
It was $1 million when we started doing the show.
Yeah, it was at $1 million a key when we started the show 3 seasons ago. So,
I thought you were talking today.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's actually San Francisco market. Yes, it shifted.
Yeah, that's why the box is glowing red down there.
That's pretty good.
It's dialed into San Francisco, but
that's pretty good.
You look at Anaheim. The project that I like a lot there are two really. The new element that's going in that Penn Investments is doing, and the new JW on top of the parking structure at the Garden Walk. Mm-hmm. And I think those are both going to be fascinating. I think they're both going to be home runs. I think you need to see a little bit of brand conversion over there. I think some of the older assets, 1950s, 60s vintage, unless they do something that's hip, chic, cool, and Americana vibe to pull people in, their days may be numbered, because you look at protected areas and you look at the amount of flags. Okay, Marriott's got 32. Yeah. Okay, I think they're all represented in the Anaheim and Anaheim Resort area. So do we create something else now so that we can put something else into Anaheim? That could be an issue depending on where they are, on the classification of the hotel.
And is it different? Is it really different enough, or is it just you want it in red or green? I mean, at some point, I think that again from my side of the equation, I look at that and I go, okay, if it's about accommodations and stay, it's one thing. Yeah. If it's about differentiating, going to this one or that one, where do we stop diluting? Because at some point it gets to be literally, do you want the red one or the green one?
Right.
There's no real other difference.
Right.
Now, are your hotel clients, Marty, are they repositioning assets right now, or are they doing any ground up?
I know there's right now in the portfolio, just for example, they built a new tower at one of their resort sites that is completed for the most part. They are.
How many more keys they add with that tower? A couple of hundred?
I think so. I don't know the exact number. I want to say it was like 11 stories, so it was significant. And then they are doing ground up, but it's an extended stay in LA. And one of his things he said, with it was interesting with what Bruce was saying about Airbnbs in that market. My client firmly believes that if you're in an extended stay, that kind of has that same feel. People can bring their own food, they can do their own thing, and they can use it almost that more similar to an Airbnb.
Absolutely.
And that product also has kind of a captured source where of who the consumer and invitees are coming in. So that will be I think that will those type of hotels will withstand any sort of recession. And I think that's what lenders are looking at. One, they're looking at brands, not unbranded. But two, they're also looking at, hey, what's the source?
Right.
Where are these people coming from? Is it a basically, I won't say frivolous, but is it, hey, this is spendable money that I don't have to worry about, and that's what it's based on, or is it a fundamental need? Like we have, it's business, convention center, where you're going to have those things. Maybe not so much a convention center, but a business center, or hospital, or things like that.
University, so, and I agree with you. I think that's a big part of it right now, and I think you're getting a deeper dive into what are truly the demand generators. Okay, give me the makeup of the guest that's staying there.
Right.
Is it the tech support guy that's coming in and putting in all new terminals at Chalk Hospital, who wants to have the kitchen and be able to cook and relax a little bit but still go out and enjoy things? Or is it the family that's coming into town that's going to Disneyland but can't afford to stay at a Disney resort,
Right.
and they want the kitchen just to help absorb
Right.
some of
the cost.
You've got 3 kids with you, and you
Right.
get the
It
bunk
gets-
beds and everything
gets
else
expensive.
going. So yeah, let's take
Yeah.
a look at this. And I've always felt, and I spent a couple of years working on a deal where we were trying to do a ground lease with in Loma Linda. And they're spending $1 billion
Medical center.
for the medical center, world-class research, and the Ronald McDonald House over there really needs some help. So if you're in a position to help the Ronald McDonald House out there, please do. But it was just I couldn't get I got their initial board of directors that I started the conversation with on board, and had a great plan. It was going to have enough space where, if the initial hotel performed the way I thought it was going to, and I hit my performance numbers, I could build another one next door, same brand, have the campus, the shared pool, the shared laundry, and all of that.
Right.
And they were really high on it. And then they elected a new board. They went, nope, we don't want to do that. And I went, oh, okay.
Oops.
But again, you got a teaching university, you got a medical school, and great opportunities. And unfortunately, this country's not getting healthier to a large degree. So people are continuing to get sick. And
we're living longer.
yeah, and we're living longer.
And there's more medical treatments available.
But, here's the thing. We touched on it, first half of the show. I think it's an interesting opportunity. I think if people look at these, especially if we slow down and look at it in terms of reprogramming, because at the end of the day, what is the issue? What is the problem? What is the need that is out there? And I think that any industry, hospitality, is not immune from this. We fall victim sometimes to basically believing that what we are doing is motivated by what we think our reasons are, versus stepping far away and actually looking at what is in demand and in need. What is the problem that requires a solution, and how can we, with our product, basically meet that demand? If you look at this, you're talking about like a property next to a medical center in a hotel format, right?
Yeah.
With an extended stay, you're thinking pregnancies, delivery, stuff like that. Okay, great. But the minute you shifted the discussion to aging, you now can reprogram that property completely differently.
Yeah.
And now basically the funding for that becomes a combination of medical coverage and personal spending.
Yeah.
So again, we have basically a place to house people in a different capacity, and I think it's going to be interesting to see, with all that extra inventory that's on there, some of it that is not very well differentiated, what happens to that in terms of repositioning. Recently, it was old buildings that were corporate buildings in downtown LA that got adaptively reused, right, into hospitality. Same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we're just about out of time. I want to thank Marty for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. And
Nice to see you
before
again.
we sign off, check out Rod Gantos' other show, The Rad Life,
The Rad
Aging
Life.
Boomers. So great show to follow. He's also
Thank you.
got Selling the Lux Life, and you're on the road with that.
I am.
So that's all good. You can find me working on the conference, albeit Meet the Money next month.
Coming
I'm
up.
planning Click 4. As we announced earlier, Bruce Ford will be back for our keynote for next year, along with Alan Ray. And hot off the presses, just got Hyatt on board as a sponsor for next year. So
Awesome.
we'll
Congrats.
be back at the West and South Coast Plaza for that. And then you can also find my other show. Check out California 3x10. But most importantly, I want to wish all the mothers out there a
Happy Mother's Day.
amazing Mother's Day, because
Yeah.
we will be back on the air after Mother's Day.
Yep.
My daughter-in-law, Carissa, you are absolutely the best. And I also want to thank my son's Aunt Ann, because she helped me raise him, and she is absolutely the best as well. So we will see you in 2 weeks. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you for being our guest today on Checkout California. We look forward to having you as a guest with us again in 2 weeks. Until then, you can always reach us through our Checkout California Facebook page or by emailing us at checkoutcalifornia@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. So do let us know what you think of the show and what areas of interest you'd like to see us cover in the future. Your feedback is very important to us as we continue to bring you the best hospitality our Golden State has to offer. Until next time, may all your days be filled with sunsets and palm trees. Now, go experience and check out California.